Hi everyone, welcome to this video where we'll be discovering about trekking Mount Kilimanjaro using the Machame Route. My name is Matt Nixon from 52 Degrees North Travel. We are a travel agency based in Stratford-upon-Avon, which happens to be positioned at 52 degrees north. With me today to give us all of the insights is Stu Darnley. Stu is National Sales Manager at GAdventures. Stu, welcome. For those that don't know, I wonder if you can tell us a little bit more about GAdventures.
Yeah, well, thanks again for having me to talk about Kilimanjaro, one of my favorite topics. Yeah, GAdventures, we're a small group tour operator. We've been running for 30 years. 2020 was our 30th birthday and we were promised cake and we got COVID. It was meant to be a massive celebration, but that was obviously dialed back given the circumstances. But yeah, we run small group adventures in over 100 countries, and we've got about 750 trips. So whether it's Kilimanjaro, that's what people commonly associate with the word GAdventures, but we've also got sailing in the Maldives. We've got, visiting beautiful locations like Antarctica, the Arctic, looking for mountain gorillas in Uganda, pretty much the whole globe. If there's somewhere you want to go, if your sense of adventure is going all the way out to Australia, well, we've got that as well. So yeah, that's our style of travel.
Awesome, thank you for that. I know as well that you've climbed Kilimanjaro twice, and you've also climbed two of the other 7 summits as well, which is Aconcagua in South America, which stands at an impressive 6,961 meters, and also Mount Kosciuszko in Australia, which stands at 2,208 meters. Now, I do know though that you also put a bit of a caveat on that Karsten's Pyramid is often counted instead of Kosciuszko, but Wikipedia says Kosciuszko is included, so that's good enough for me.
I'll take it. Yeah, I think the diehard climbers that do the 7 summits, they say if you can take a wheelchair to the top of Kosciuszko because you could ride a bike or take a wheelchair, then it's probably not one of the 7 summits. But it is the highest point on Australia, even if it's not quite that difficult, I guess.
Yeah, well,
but yeah,
it's good
foolish enough to climb Kilimanjaro twice, but it's a mountain beautiful enough to do it as well. It's just such a beautiful mountain, such a great adventure.
Perfect. That's exactly what we wanted to hear, because the reason we're doing this is that 52 Degrees North Travel have a group of 12 people, including myself, that are heading to Tanzania to climb Kilimanjaro using the Machame Route. We're obviously going with GAdventures, hence why Stu's here today. And quite obviously, we've got lots and lots of questions that go along with it, such as kit or altitude and altitude sickness, weather or temperatures we might be experiencing, and the list goes on. So, but as well as our group, I'm sure this video will be useful to any other group or person looking to climb the mountain in the future. So if you are interested in this, you can give us a shout on the messages below, or any other GAdventures trip, we'll be pleased to help out also. So over to you, Stu.
Thank you. So on Google Earth, you can bring up obviously Kilimanjaro, and this I'll just show you quickly is the Machame Route that you'll be taking. I really love this because you can obviously move around, you can zoom in and see where the different camps are, get an idea of the incline you'll be climbing. But just as a quick top line summary, so the Machame Route, you start here at the Machame Gate. So we drive there from Moshi. You make your way through the rainforest on the first day to the Machame Camp, which is just when you start to leave the rainforest. And the next day, you're walking up to the Shira Camp at 3,800 meters. Across that next day, you're going to go up to the Lava Tower. So I'll speak more about that. Down to the Barranco Camp, which is lower. And that's quite important because you want to go high and then sleep low to avoid altitude sickness. Across to Barafu, which is kind of our high point camp, where we only spend about 8 hours or so before going to the top. Yeah, being successful, making it all the way to the top, and then we come down to Mweka, which is quite a big decline at that point, and that's obviously good. And then all the way back down to Mweka Camp for some beers, and then back, obviously back to the hotel for a much needed rest. So let me bring up the presentation here quickly, and I'll take you guys through Machame and what to expect. So as Matt said, I'm Stu, and I was foolish enough or fortunate enough to climb Kilimanjaro twice, about 15 years apart. Most recently in November 2019, just before everything went a little bit crazy last year. Slightly different experience each time. The top you'll see snow, which is the most recent one, and then the lower one we didn't have as much snow. So, I mean, snow can occur any time of the year. It's the mountain itself is on the equator, and I believe that when Livingston, don't quote me on that, but when one of the first explorers came back to Europe and said, I found a mountain at the equator with snow on it, they said, you must be lying. But obviously it's at such an altitude that it does get snow, even though it's bang on the equator. So I guess the first question everyone says is, how hard is this going to be? Do I need to carry all my stuff? Well, you're not carrying the tents, you're not carrying the food, you're not carrying anything like that. You're just carrying a day bag, which will have water, which will have layers in it, maybe your camera. So how hard is it? Well, with good preparation, then anyone able-bodied can absolutely achieve it. So don't be put off by that. Just to quickly cover the different routes. So the yellow one that you can see here is the Machame route. That's the one that you guys will be doing. There are many different routes up Kilimanjaro. They all have different approaches to the mountain, and they're all equally stunning. The reason that we favor the Machame route, a couple of reasons, is that climatization that I spoke about. So you'll see here, because this is kind of a side profile, you get to Shira Camp at 3,800 meters, Barako Camp at 3,900, and then Barafu at 4,500. So it's that kind of going up to the side of the mountain on the west side and then coming around the front face, which really helps with the altitude sickness.
Yeah, it looks like the three, like Camp 2, Barranco Camp, Karanga Camp, they're all, you know, pretty much the same altitude, aren't they? So I would guess that, like you say, must help a lot.
Yeah, and it also means you're going to the summit on the fourth night. If we have a look over here at the Marangu, it's another route that we do, so there's nothing wrong with it, but you've got your first night here at 2,700, your second night here at Horembo, and then you're also at a similar height to Barafu on the third night. So that's quite an abrupt climb, and that's why in terms of altitude sickness or people feeling unwell, they're more likely to feel it on Marangu. And like I said, we run that route. So, you know, it is successful and people do make it, but you're more likely to achieve or have altitude sickness for that reason. And also, I think it's quite nice that this route, the Machame, comes around the face of the mountain. So you get to see different sites, and then you finish in a different direction as well. So you'll notice the Marangu goes up and back the same way. So it's quite nice.
And also they have huts, don't they, on the Marangu route rather than...
They do. Yeah, so that you've got A-frame huts, which sound lovely, but of course you could be in with other people. You'll be in obviously with your traveling party, but you could be in with other traveling parties. The Marangu is sometimes called the Coca-Cola route because there's also the option to kind of buy snacks and things along the way. And then the Machame's nickname is the whiskey route because of course whiskey is harder, but whiskey is nicer than just Coke. So there's just another way to look at it. These are up on our website as well. So, but then I've just quickly isolated the route there to show you. You've got that Machame camp, which is night 1 on the mountain. Shira camp is night 2. Barako camp is night 3. Karanga camp is used when we do a 9-day climb. And it's kind of like a midway that you don't exactly need, but that's the option when we do a 9-day climb. You guys are doing the 8-day, which is the most common. That's the one I've done. So we skip Karanga. We have lunch there actually, and we go to Barafu. So on the Machame route, there's another map. I think you've seen enough maps. We'll
No, they're all good. They're all different.
They're all different. So we start in Moshi. Moshi's at the base of Kilimanjaro, and if the weather's clear, you can see the mountain, which is absolutely stunning. You can obviously see it when you fly in, depending on where you're flying into. If you fly into Kilimanjaro International Airport, you're almost certainly going to see the mountain, which is really nice. Our hotel that we use in Moshi is actually somewhat a cooperative. So that means that all the food, all the funds from the restaurant and from the hotel are used to support the school, which is adjoining. So you don't visit the school, but you know it's nice to know that when you know your stay and that the meals you're eating and everything is going to help that school. That's really
I actually found the website for that particular lodge, and I was really pleased that was part of it, that it's obviously going back into the local kind of community.
Yeah, and what do we also ask that any of the parents of the children, if they're farmers, if they actually want to sell their wares sounds very old school, but if they want to sell their tomatoes, if they want to sell any of their vegetables or anything to the restaurant, then that's also another option. So I think that's really nice.
Yeah, cool.
So you get there, day one, you have a meeting with the local guides. He's going to go through any questions you may have, going to ask if anyone's taking Diamox, which we'll talk a little bit more about, if anyone's planning to take altitude sickness. Are people taking malaria tablets as well? Because even though the malaria mosquitoes are only prevalent kind of at sea level, as you start to go up the mountain, you're therefore much less likely to encounter any of the mosquitoes. So some people choose not to take the tablets at all. That's obviously a discussion for with your GP, because some people say, well, once I get through that rainforest on the first day, then I'm not going to encounter mosquitoes.
So I've taken malaria tablets a couple of times, and the once they lasted kind of like, you had one tablet a week, I think, and then other ones were kind of once a day or twice a day, and they did obviously have an effect on you. I mean, is there any kind of length of time that people may need to take those beforehand?
Well, yeah, that's the thing. You're meant to, for the best coverage, even if the chance is just so minute, for the best coverage, you're meant to take them, I think, a week or more in advance of actually going into the malaria zone. And then you're meant to take them afterwards as well. So it could actually end up being a 2 to 3 week period just for the mountain climb. And that's why some people choose not to, because they say it's a mathematical risk they're willing to take. But yeah, of course, consult your GP, I guess. Yeah. So yeah, we have the pre-meeting. That's where they'll weigh your bags as well, because you're allowed 15 kilos for the mountain. The rest will stay at the hotel securely. And yeah, then we're all set to go. So we go to the Machame gate, and when we arrive, at least with GAdventures, you've got your entire crew are all there. So these are all the guys that are going to be carrying your stuff. You've got your lead porters there as well, which are the ones that speak English. You've got your chefs as well. Obviously very important because they're going to keep you fed. And I remember when we got off the bus, they're all dancing and wearing all the G get up and everything. So that was really nice. So we sign in to say that we're going to start climbing. This is a quick picture at the gate. So we've already reached 1,800 meters, which is a good start towards our 5,800. And then day one is actually walking through the rainforest. So the first part is walking along a road, which is, I guess, an access road that goes quite a long way up the mountain. And it's really nice. You might get a little wet because you're in the rainforest, but there's also a chance to see monkeys as well. And you're walking for 5 to 7 hours today, but it is very gradual pace and gradual incline.
And then it turns. Would you say that first day is?
What, sorry?
What kind of distance would you say it is?
Well, I've got 11 kilometers here, and then I always need to remember what that is in miles.
No, the kilometers is good. I do kilometers as well. So
okay,
that's fine by me.
So you're looking about 11 kilometers. It's one of the longer distances that you do because it's not a very steep incline. We saw some monkeys as well, which was really nice. And then there's a couple more pictures here, which I kind of joke about because I know that they've asked the people climbing to turn around and pretend to walk downhill, because you'd actually be walking uphill, obviously, on day one, and these pictures are coming downhill. Yeah. No downhill on day one. So we arrive up at the Moshi camp, and we're at 3,000 meters. So for those that could be quite sensitive to altitude, you could feel it here. You might feel the lack of oxygen. No different really to going skiing in Europe, in the Alps, where you might get a chairlift that high, to the top of a ski run. But this is where you could start to feel that the air is a little bit thinner.
And what kind of effects would you feel when you have that? Headaches and anything else?
Yeah, usually headaches. Loss of appetite is when it gets quite bad. But the main thing, which they'll keep telling you, that your team are really there to support you. So they'll keep telling you, look, you should be hydrating. You should be drinking. You should be drinking so much you need to go to the bathroom all the time. And don't be worried about that. I think what did they call it? I think you've got to, if you have to go bush or something, they made something playful of it. Like if someone needs to go bush, that's okay. That's completely fine. So yeah, we made it to Machame camp. If the weather's quite clear, you might be able to see a bit of the mountain, but not really from there. And then the next day we're going up to Shira Camp. So this first morning was a bit of a shock, to be honest. It was a bit steeper. There's a picture there on the right where you can see we were down by the green dot. Might not be very obvious there, but we were down by.
Yeah, I can see it.
And so we've already started to gain some altitude. So it's just 1 foot in front of it, 1 foot in front of the other. The picture on the left there, it's always a bit difficult to show kind of an incline in a photo, especially taken from above, because it doesn't look that bad. But you'll see that it's almost like you're climbing up a river. You know, there's no, it's not pre-made steps or anything. But you'll see that a lot of people got trekking poles. That's certainly suggested, if only for when you come down off the mountain. It's really important then. And some people obviously take their trekking poles, stick them in their backpack, point them to the sky, the pointy bits, and then if they're more comfortable walking without them.
So obviously on the first couple of days, I know you went, the one this time I think it might have been, it was kind of mini rainy season, was it? And
yep.
Is that normal for the amount of clothing you would want to wear on the first couple of days from what we can see on the pictures?
Yeah, I mean, because the mountain is the world's largest freestanding mountain, like it really creates its own climate, its own weather. And I mean, I guess with global warming, etc., like the weather can be even more unpredictable. So always good that you've actually got those good rain layers just in case. I had to chuckle a little bit that the guides had umbrellas because they do it all the time. So they're just walking with umbrellas, not really raincoats, umbrellas instead. So you could bring an umbrella if you want, but most people are just wearing their raincoat layers.
And I've seen quite a few people wearing ponchos or maybe they may be wearing waterproof jacket underneath, of course, but it looked like they were wearing ponchos, a lot of people.
Yeah, I think that's just obviously keep your legs dry. I climbed with a colleague who was wearing a poncho the whole time. That worked for her. And as you say, it could be an extra layer, you know, because when you actually get to camp, if it was raining and if your jacket is wet, your rain jacket, and if that's kind of your primary jacket, well, there's not a great chance to dry anything. There's no open flames permitted. So it would only be the cooking tent. And even then you can't really dry anything. So it's not a bad idea to have kind of a spare wet layer. I guess otherwise the next morning, if it was wet the day before, you're putting on a wet jacket. So I quickly discovered my waterproof jacket was not nearly as waterproof as I thought. So yeah, definitely get good kit, get good waterproof kit, or try the different things you can put in the washing machine to make it even more waterproof.
Yeah.
Threw in this quick picture, which I took, which was from the Machame camp, and might give you a sense of how high you are at that point, because you can see through, and you could be forgiven for thinking the picture was taken from an airplane window, perhaps. As you can see out into kind of the savannah. So from the Machame camp, you start to see Kibo, you start to see the mountain, which is quite nice if it's clear, so you can see your goal, and I think that's really nice. And then you realize in that picture, you're going to start to walk to the right and around the face of it. But there's also some really good views from Machame camp itself. And this next video, if it plays, will show you what you can, I almost don't want to spoil it for you, but what you can expect when you come into some of the camps.
Kilimanjaro, 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 marefu sana. Ewe nyoka, ewe nyoka, ewe nyoka, unawazunguka. Na wageni, na wageni, na wageni.
Yeah, I just love that. But yeah, like you might have had a long day, you might be feeling a bit defeated. You walk into camp and all of the porters, we call them the Kili Kings. They're all just energized. They're all up and they're dancing. They're trying to get you to dance. Yeah, it's just a lot of fun, really a lot of fun. And it's that energy that they keep bringing, which helps spur you on. So the next morning, before we set off to start climbing, you can see there you got the mountain in the background. Absolutely stunning. The top is around about here, in the top right there, and it was so nice. I think they also needed to fold up the roof of the dining tent, so they just took the whole dining tent off, and we were just sitting there finishing our breakfast. You can see they've got thermoses there, so that we're having lots of hot chocolate. We're having lots of tea and coffee if we want.
And what sort of height is this again, the Barranco camp?
So this is about 3,200 or so meters.
Sorry, Shearer camp.
Sorry, Shearer. Next slide, and it'll remind me. 3,800. There we go.
If by magic.
There you go. Look at that. So we're heading off to the Barranco camp today, and I think that's one of the most stunning. We're also going to the lava tower. So you immediately, hopefully, notice a change in scenery. So we've gone from the jungle, then we've gone to the moorland, and now we're out in this rocky terrain where there's really only these kind of small kind of alpine shrubs. There's another shot there. So this is where you're quite exposed. If it's raining, if it's snowing, you know, it's going to land on you because we don't have any cover. And throughout the day, we're walking to the lava tower. So this is where we're going to this higher point. And of course, Kilimanjaro is a volcano. The lava tower is a point at which the lava was coming out and formed this volcano. So we formed this tower. So we go up there. At this point, we're at 4,000. Let me jump back so I remember. Oh, I haven't put it on here. I think it's about 4,600 meters or 15,000 feet up at the lava tower. So this is the highest you've been at this point. And this is where some people might feel unwell. They might feel that shortness of breath. But the really great thing about this route is you're then descending from that 4,700 to around 3,800. And the reason that's really good for combating altitude sickness is they say climb high, sleep low, because your body goes, oh, I don't like this, you know, but you've experienced it, and then you'll descend and your body's grateful that you've descended and you've got more oxygen as you get down to Barranco camp. So as you're descending to Barranco camp, you go through these beautiful trees. I've nicknamed them the Dr. Seuss trees because they look like they'd be out of that kind of Dr. Seuss book or something. Very, very trippy. Of course, there's not many large trees up there except for these, and you can kind of see that a lot of them are getting their moisture either from the rain or they're getting them from the mist and the clouds. So here's a good shot of Barranco camp as you're getting down towards it. You can see all our orange tents are set up there. You can see these blocks here, which are the kind of the toilet blocks around. Now, what we chose to do, and maybe what you guys will all choose to do, is you can rent a toilet. Sounds a bit funny, but you essentially rent a toilet, and then with that comes a guy who carries it. And that means you use that private toilet between a few people rather than actually going and using the public toilets. So the public toilets are drop toilets, drop composting toilets. But I guess, you know, it may be that you wake up in the night, and it might not look like a long distance, but you wake up in the night at these orange tents. You want to go to the loo, and so you come up to this building here. But if you've got one nearby, then this green, if you can see it there, that tiny green tent was our toilet tent. There was one there and then one over here, and we had boys and girls. That's the way that we did it. So something that inevitably you're going to need to know about on the mountains. So I thought I'd cover that off for you. So we wake up at Barranco camp, and this is where we're heading up. So this is going to be a very long day, truth be told. So you really want a good sleep that night because you can see we're right underneath the mountain. This is absolutely stunning at this point. And what we're going to do today is we're going to go from the Barranco camp to the Barafu. We're going to sleep for as long as we can, get up at about midnight and go to the top. And that's why this is what feels like a very long day. But first, we're going to climb the Barranco wall. Now, the Barranco wall is what honestly might scare some people about this route. That's what people are usually worried about, because in a lot of pictures, it looks quite foreboding like this. It looks like this sheer rock face, where in reality, it's actually a whole series of just little bits you can climb back and forth, and it's not nearly as steep as I guess a picture like this makes it look quite steep. I
was going to say that if that picture's meant to look good, it's kind of like that's still pretty steep.
Well, I've got a little video that comes up next because there's a point on the climb called the Kissing Rock, and they say it's the Kissing Rock because if you don't kiss it, then you're not close enough to the wall. So I've got a video of me kissing a rock, but hopefully you'll get a sense that it's not that vertical. So I'll jump over it. There we are. Okay, before I hit play, you'll be able to see he's standing next to the Kissing Rock. And this is the point where you just shimmy past. He's there to help you because below that is just a small drop. It's not a big drop. And you can even see here that this is not a really big incline. You know, this is just one of the more difficult bits to navigate. And you could also say maybe they were just looking for a bit of drama. So that's why this is the Kissing Rock. So I'll show you. Okay. There's me kissing a rock. So we carry on. We have lunch usually around Karanga camp, and then we're up to Barranco camp. So Barranco camp's the high camp. It's quite rocky. There's no running water, so the porters, the Kili Kings, will go and collect it. It's not a place you want to stay for a long time. I mean, it's a high altitude camp. It's kind of what you expect. This is where we're grateful that we've got our toilet tents as well. You'll see that the tents are typically placed between different rocks as well. And then this is when you're going to bed. You're waking up. I guess a little side note is you're going to bed typically in what you're going to climb to the top in. So you're trying to wear those layers, get them already warm, especially your base layers, so that we're going to get to this camp as soon as we can. We're going to get there 4 p.m., 5 p.m. We're going to eat some food and go to bed as soon as possible. And then we're going to be up at about midnight or just after, and that's when we're going to start that climb to the summit. And that climb can be about 7 hours. And I've got a little clip to kind of show you what that climb's like. But it is really good to have, wearing those socks, wearing those base layers to bed, because then when you wake up, you've got a lot less to do. You're just putting on your shoes, putting on your boots, even little things like having your boots inside the tent, or if they're not too dirty, you can have your boots, you can have your camera, your Apple Watch, whatever it is, you can have that inside the sleeping bag as well, just to make sure that it stays all warm.
So would you say that this next bit is kind of, you've got some fairly defined different kind of kit that you're kind of needing for the first time, like down jacket or extra layers?
Yeah, extra layers. Some people choose double socks, just for that extra warmth. You've definitely got, like you say, you've got your bigger jacket that maybe you've not needed to wear yet. You've got your head torch. Most importantly, you've got your snacks. So, from home, you bring along something that energizes you. So for me, it was kind of like gummy babies, kind of gummy jelly bean kind of things, something you can pop in quickly, just kind of have a snack as you're walking. It's also at this point that you make sure that if you're using a Camelback for your water, or you're using your own bottle, they can freeze because you're getting below zero sometimes during this 7 hours. But as you'll see in the next shot, like, it sounds like, okay, it's 7 hours, but it's actually 7 hours at a snail's pace, one step in front of the other. If you weren't at altitude, you could do this in a lot less. We could do this a lot quicker, but the next video I'll show you is kind of what to expect. And we're all together, a bit like a caterpillar, to be honest, kind of one step at a time. You're watching the person in front. And as you'll hear in the video, you've got our Kili Kings who are singing, kind of all singing back and forth, which was really magical. And then after that, they were talking about the Premier League, which I found hilarious, because they were talking in Swahili. So they'd be talking Swahili and then they go, Liverpool, Man U, so you knew what they were talking about. But yeah, I'll play the video.
Touching on the water situation, obviously you said it freezes up. So when I've done other things, I've had an Nalgene bottle, like a plastic bottle with a wide lid, with a cover on it, like a neoprene cover on it. That kind of thing work, would you think?
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, that's what I had. It still froze. Camelbacks, like I said, tend to freeze, especially the long pipe kind of part of it. That's what you'll often find.
And with the water itself, obviously, you say there's no running water across all of it, which is kind of expected. But what do you do? Do you have it pre-purified or you have to treat it yourself, or how does that work?
Yeah, so at Barranco camp, there's no running water, but there's water about half an hour away. The other camps have water. And what we do is they'll boil it up and use purification tablets as well. So when it gets to you, it's completely clean. You could drink it as is. Preferred to do myself was bring along some squash. You've got those small little, quite small ones that are heavily concentrated. And I'd put a bit of that in there just because I didn't want to drink water for 5 days.
The chlorine kind of taste, eh?
Yeah, well, to be fair, I had so much of the squash in it. I don't know if it tasted of anything else, but it's definitely hygienic. You don't have to worry about that.
Cool.
So yeah, I'll roll this little video. You can get a bit of an idea of what it's like.
Ayo dida hamba, ayo dida hamba, ayo dida hamba, ola jaliya hamba wapike salama. Ayo dida hamba, ayo dida hamba, ayo dida hamba, ayo dida hamba, ola jaliya hamba wapike salama. Uyo buruno hamba, ana o.
So yeah, you can see there, just walking along slowly, you're looking at the backpack of the person in front, and then we'll stop every half an hour or so. We'll make sure we have a drink, we'll have a snack, and then keep moving again, because we're not moving quite quickly. You know, if you were going out for a run and it's been quite cold lately, you know, you start to get up to temperature, you start to get warm. But you'll see there, we're actually walking quite slowly. So whilst you get warm, you don't get really warm, I guess is to say.
Yeah. With the obviously you're probably going to come on to this, or you're definitely going to come on to it in a minute, with how long it takes to get up there, and what kind of time it might be when you get to the top. But is it a case that when you're doing this, it is very much a case you have to leave at that time of night because you're not going to get back down to your next camp in time for the next night? Or is it just kind of something that's done, is just climb at night?
Well, no, I guess it's a few factors. Is like, if you were to climb Everest, it's usually a similar thing. You know, you leave in the early hours of the morning because you have that really long day, because there's the getting up, but then you've got to get back down. And in this case, we're descending a really long way. So you give yourself more time to do that. But also weather tends to be more favorable in the morning, and it clearer as well in most cases before the sun's come up and started to create more clouds, for want of a better way to explain it. But yeah, so the next kind of, so you're walking like that for about 5 hours, maybe 4, from midnight. And then the next defining moment is the sun starts to come up and you're already above the cloud line. Obviously you're in this beautiful spot where you can start to see the sun cutting through, and that brings this new energy. You can see your surroundings, and you start to see kind of stellar point. So Uhuru Point is the summit. That's 5,800 meters. At 5,700 meters is Stellar Point, and you start to see kind of that you're almost there, and that just brings this new energy to the entire group. But also at this point, all the porters or the Kili Kings, they start to take your bags off you. So if you were carrying your water, things like that, they're saying, right, I'll take that for you. And they're making sure that you've maybe turn off your head torches. They'll take your head torches. You know, for me, I think I put on sunglasses instead of my normal glasses.
Interesting. So they kind of strip you back almost to do the last bit.
Yeah. And I've got a short video just to show as the sun's coming up, kind of what it all looks like. And this is before you've reached Stellar Point. Yeah, so you can see just up in the corner, kind of by that rock, not too far from there is Stellar Point. So you start to really get energized. You can look back down towards Mwenzi, which is one of the smaller volcanoes that you can see there. And you start to get this sense of achievement that you're almost there. But then there's I guess a little bit of a false summit, in the sense that, you know, you've walked for 6 hours, it's around 4 kilometers to get there. So it's not a great distance, it's just incredibly slow. And then you're at Stellar Point. And at Stellar Point, you've then got another hour, another kilometer, about 0.6 of a mile, to get to the actual summit, which, even though it might not look like it, is where the arrow is pointing there. And this is where we take a little bit of a break and then carry on further as well. And really at this point, like, that last hour can be quite difficult. It's the altitude, really. You think, I can walk a kilometer, I can walk 0.6 of a mile, it's not that far. But of course, there's a lot less oxygen. So everyone's just taking their time. And you'd know at that point, if you made it there, that, you know, a lot of the hard parts behind you, just keep on pushing, and then you're going to make it to the top. And then when you're up at the top,
not wanting to dwell on kind of what might happen or whatever, but with all this kind of stuff, is people kind of fear a little bit about the unknown. So if you have any trouble up the mountain, what kind of things are in place, kind of safety measures, or presumably you're having your oxygen levels checked and things like that. Wonder if you can talk us through that.
Yeah, I didn't even mention that actually. So every evening and every breakfast, we get our oxygen checked with one of those small things that goes on your finger to measure that. No mountain is worth your health, worth sacrificing your health. So we had one person on our climb that had very bad altitude sickness, was feeling unwell, headaches and such, and turned back before we'd made it to Stellar Point. He's actually rebooked to go and do it again at some point, determined not to let it beat him. But yeah, look, if you're that unwell and you need to go back, then we always make sure there's enough porters with us on the actual night part of the climb that someone can go back with you. And equally on the first part of the climb, in those first couple of days, if you injure yourself, roll your ankle, anything like that, there's enough people that you can be taken back down. Should that happen.
From this point on this particular day as well, you'll be coming back down this line anyway, this route anyway, won't you, to the next night? So I guess you're kind of just heading back early.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that individual headed back to the camp, to Barafu, where we were, slept for a couple of hours, and then started making his way down to Mweka, which is where we eventually saw him. Probably 12 hours later. So you made it up to the top. You made it to the world's highest freestanding mountain, the highest point in Africa. The snow could be snow. You can see there was a bit of snow there in that picture, but not a lot. We had quite a lot of snow. Quite difficult to predict, to be honest. There is a chance to see the glaciers that are off in the distance. You're not close enough to really go and see them, but you can see the glaciers. And then here's a shot looking back down. So the actual sign for Stellar Point is kind of down and around here where the cursor is there. So you can see that's not a great distance, and that's where you're gaining an extra 100 meters. So the air at the summit is about half as breathable as what we're used to at sea level. And that's why we suddenly think like, okay, I go to take a breath and there's half as much oxygen as I'm expecting, or my body is expecting. And I guess I've kind of fast tracked a little bit there, but from there you go down to Mweka camp, down to Barafu, normally have some food, maybe an hour or two sleep, just to kind of rest. It's worth noting that on that way down, you've put in so much to get to the top that you're absolutely shattered on the way down. So on the way down, trekking poles are key. You take your time, and it can still be 2 to 3 hours to descend. So it can still take a good while, and it feels like you're descending forever. And this is where, like I said, you're really tired. The sun's come up, so you could be really hot as well. And that's why it's important to have those layers, because I had thermal underwear on my legs, and then I think I had a set of kind of trekking trousers, and then a waterproof trouser layer over the top as well, so I could sit down in the snow and not get wet. And at this point, by now it's 11 a.m. or so. You're heading down the mountain, and you do feel quite hot. In fact, I think I actually got sunburnt as well on the way down. So you wouldn't think you need sunscreen that much, but sunscreen, sunglasses, very important. Yeah, now that I recall, I actually got quite sunburnt around my neck coming down off the mountain. It wasn't even necessarily going up.
Oh, right, okay.
So then we get all the way down to Mweka. We're down there about 2,500 meters, spend the night there, and then the next day we're coming off the mountain and going back to the hotel.
So do you find there's any particular time in the descent that you kind of think, oh, I'm feeling loads different, because there's more oxygen all of a sudden?
Yeah, so once you've left, so Barafu's still 4,700, so you might feel like, oh, there's a lot more oxygen because you've descended 1,000 meters already. But then it's really when you start to get down towards Mweka that it's better.
Okay.
And then I just threw a couple of things in here just to, there are some more FAQs that I've got coming up, but the summit is higher than Everest Base Camp. That's a nice little fact. So you can say you've been higher than Everest Base Camp. The Machame, obviously longer ascent for higher chance of summiting. There's typically 60 support staff for a group of 16. Pack light, that is to say that, when you've got that 15 kilos included, you don't need to max out the 15 kilos for the climbing part. Don't bring a lot more than you need.
So with that, I know we had a couple of questions about kind of numbers of clothing, you know, how many pairs of socks, or I mean, I'm hopeless at packing, and I tend to take, if there's a bag that's that size or a weight limit, that's kind of what I kind of end up. But I'm trying to get better at it. But with that, I'm guessing you just kind of need maybe one pair of socks and a spare, that you, like one you're wearing, one a spare, and then even they could match together to go to be the double layer for summit night. Or you know, what kind of quantities of things would you normally be looking to take?
On socks, I'd take one pair for every day, because you don't know how, I guess, smelly they're going to get. You know how. So yeah, for your underwear, one pair for every day at least. Probably even a spare one for the mountain. Same with the socks. So one pair for every day, and maybe an extra one for the summit. Because what's quite nice is when you've got that summit climb, you know, it's already a very mental game. And it's quite nice to say, right, now I'm putting on my nice clean, thermal underwear. I'm putting on my nice clean socks. They're my summit socks. You know, there's something
That's good. I like that.
yeah, something mentally about saving your best socks, you know, for the for the climb. There's a little note there about removing your contact lenses. I mean, it can get very cold if you've been skiing. You know, they're not necessarily going to freeze to your eyeballs, but I chose glasses on this climb. The night sky can be really good. So anyone that's got a camera which is good enough and you're willing to carry it, you can get some really good star photos. Important to note, you can't charge a thing. There's no power anywhere. So I brought 2 power banks, kind of a regular and then a solar powered one. I didn't even really need the solar powered one because my other one was enough. And that was really to charge an Apple Watch, because I wanted just to track the altitude, which that was doing, and charge my phone because I was listening to some music for the 7 hours. You know, that's another little tip, is if you've got something that you can play music through, the battery might die, but then my phone was a little bit old anyway. But if that kind of motivates you to be listening to something for those, you know, 6 to 7 hours you're walking, then that's a great idea. And of course, headlamp, which is on the packing list anyway. So I guess anticipating a few questions we might have. So altitude, how's it going to affect you? Half the breathable oxygen is what you'd expect up there. It's worth noting that you could be an Olympian and altitude sickness can still get you. You know, this is not limited to those that, you know, perhaps unwell or those that are fit. It's been said that smokers are less likely to get altitude sickness because they're already used to less oxygen, is what I've heard. But really, the whole thing there is just walking slowly. What they'll say to you is pole pole, which is slow in Swahili, and you just basically take your time. You know, like I said, no mountain's worth your health. So working along slowly, making sure you're drinking plenty as well, making sure you're eating, and they'll be constantly checking, you know, how you are. This is not something where, you know, they're not there for you, like they're asking you all the time how you are. So that's really important.
With the altitude bit, obviously, we touched on Diamox like right at the bit, or near the beginning, and I'm guessing that kind of the vast majority, if not all of the group, kind of take Diamox, and just interested to know kind of what you took, or what the dosage you took, and how you felt it, if you felt it affected you at all.
Yeah, so I guess it's worth noting that, of course, I'm not a doctor, and be sure to seek GP advice, doctor's advice. I've always taken Diamox when I've gone to altitude, so arguably I don't know, you know, how it affects me if I hadn't have taken it. It's my understanding, like I said, I'm not a doctor, is that it increases your respiratory rate. So I choose to have half a tablet before bed, because that way I'm less likely to have to get up and go to the bathroom, because it does increase your need to go to the bathroom. And that means when I'm sleeping, which is when you're doing most of your acclimatization, when I'm sleeping, hopefully I'm breathing more often or deeper. And that means I've got a better chance of acclimatization. Now, it's entirely up to the group. You know, you need to bring your own Diamox. It's not given by not given by the porters unless you're really unwell, because in some cases I believe it can help with altitude sickness. We had some people in the group that took it, some people in the group that didn't. There's small side effects. The one that I've personally experienced is kind of a pins and needles. So I remember that, you feel it in your fingers, or I think my left toe, my left big toe went numb. Very odd kind of side effects on that. So, I mean, they're obviously experts, the guys that are climbing with you, so they'll also know what's a suggested, I guess, prescription. But yeah, it's also worth speaking to obviously your GP or doing your own research on that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I have to say, I went to the GP when we climbed Mount Kilimanjaro last year, and they didn't really have a lot of knowledge about it. I kind of told them a little bit about what I knew, which is very limited, and they gave me a prescription for it, no problem. I ended up not taking it actually, but I kind of wish I had either taken it there or at home, just to see what the effects were before I went. Like, taking a tablet that's a little bit unknown to you, I'm wondering whether taking it before I go anywhere would give you like a bit of a base on what might, how, if it's okay for you to take, that kind of thing.
Yeah, it could do. Yeah, you could get a measure on how you feel, because then you'll know how you feel at altitude and whether it's giving you those weird side effects, just for you to understand. Yeah.
And
So
did you
definitely
take it before you went, or literally just?
no, actually, no. I think you take it the day before you go to altitude, or 2 days before you go to altitude. So you don't take it too early. But yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
But I guess talking about food, obviously food's really important. So you don't do any of the cooking; that's all done for you. Some really good food. You'd be surprised, when just fish appears on the third day, and sometimes it's because they've had a top up of food that's come from the bottom of the mountain at some point. Like I said, we really favored the hot chocolate, the coffee. They've got tea, they've got all of that. We were absolutely smashing through the hot chocolate. That's really good. So that you will be fed well, and obviously that's really important. And it's good quality food that, well, you need that energy basically to burn. Of course, we can cater if there were vegetarians, vegans, so we can cater for them as well, or people that have got any dietary requirements. You're not typically going to find too many exotic foods, so you wouldn't have to be worried about if you're allergic to shellfish. I don't think we're going to pull out a lobster or anything like that, but obviously we can accommodate any of that. Sleeping's a big thing. People wonder about that. So full service camping means by the time you get to the camp, your tent's set up and your bag's inside. And that's really quite nice, actually. And then in the morning, you don't even need to pack up the tent. You just pack your bag. You leave your bag in the tent. This is your duffel bag, the 15 kilos. You leave that in the tent and start walking. And then the porters pack it all up and walk past you whilst you're walking along slowly at a nice pace. They're bolting past with all this weight on their back because they want to get to the next camp and set up. So they're absolute machines. Common question is like bringing an air mattress or things like that. We've got really thick, they must be like 2 to 3 inches thick, proper foam mattresses, which they fold up and carry. So the first time I climbed, I think it was an air mattress or a yoga mat, that kind of thing. But these are proper full size kind of mattresses. So I guess they're still single mattresses, but they're about, well, it says they're 1.6 inches thick, so about 2 inches. Yeah.
And there's 2 to a tent, I'm guessing, unless anything crazy happens.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, 2 to a tent. So I guess the conditions, this says you'll be trekking in November, but this was actually taken from a different presentation, sorry, so you can ignore that. It's actually in October, which is very similar, but the thing we found in November is we were going in the mini rainy season, and you're not, and that's very important. You're going early October, so you shouldn't experience as much rain. But there's still, the rest kind of stands is that, the average temperature is around 30 degrees, and as you start to get higher, it will get colder and it can get below zero, obviously on summit night. We touched on the drinking. What do you have to carry? Yeah, your porters will carry about 30 pounds. The rest can be stored safely at the hotel, and you're really only your day bag. So that's why when you think about what you want to carry, I chose to take a DSLR, like a big camera, which promptly got kind of moisture in the lens, which means I was basically just lugging it around after the third day because we had quite a lot of rain. It's fine now. Thanks for asking. But it's, when you're carrying expensive kit and then it stops working, it's a bit of a concern. But GoPro was really good because they're obviously quite hardy. So if you're thinking of a camera, you've obviously got your phone. SLRs are obviously really great quality, but GoPro stood me all the way through, which was great.
Yeah.
And of course, yeah, can you turn around? Yeah, of course. You know, it's a little bit more on altitude sickness actually I've got here. So,
Oh, cool.
you know, everyone will experience some form of mild altitude sickness. So it could actually be having a headache, things like that. Different symptoms. So headache, nausea, loss of appetite, tingling in the fingers and toes as well can happen. They normally disappear as well. But those main things there, so staying hydrated, 4 to 6 liters of water a day sounds excessive. It is a lot of water, and that's why I said you should probably be drinking enough that you've got to go to the bathroom all the time, and that's a good thing. Avoiding tobacco, alcohol. There's no alcohol on the mountain unless you bring it yourself for a little, you know, tipple at the top. Yeah, don't go up until symptoms go down. So people acclimatize at different rates. Before the trip, obviously good work rest cycle, avoid excessive work hours. It's worth thinking in that week, in that run up, that you're not overdoing yourself, because if you're already burnt out before you even get on the plane, we know that flying can take it out of you. And then to start climbing the mountain like that wouldn't be great. Yeah, take it a really slow pace, even if it feels like you're going the pace your grandma would go. You know, really slow pace on those first couple of days. And yeah, the walk high, sleep low, which is what we're doing. So yeah, the full support team will be there. So you've got our CEOs, which are the ones that are very well versed in English, and then we have the porters as well that carry the tents, all the cooking equipment. Everyone's certified. I was actually surprised to learn that if you're part of this certification, then they have almost like a spy on each tour. So to have someone that's from the certification kind of bureau, and they're also a porter, and they'll be part of the group, and they're constantly making sure, okay, the porters are being treated fairly, they've got the right equipment, they've got the right tents, you know, food's being prepared correctly, and they're not just disposing of the leftover food in the wrong way. So everyone's held to a very high standard, which I think is really good. And then, yeah, I guess when we come on to training, personally for me, I found out with 7 weeks, I think my boss said, oh, do you want to come and climb Kilimanjaro? And I said, oh, okay. So with 7 weeks notice, for me, it was a lot of legs. And I was grateful for that. I never felt any pain in my legs, you know, after a day of walking. So I'd obviously worked them kind of well enough. It is a very leg mountain, so to speak, like you're not using your arms a whole lot. But then, of course, general body fitness is so important. One of the main things there is just the stamina. So going for long walks, being very comfortable with your footwear, so much so that you've worn it in. This is not, you know, you don't want your first steps in those boots to be on the mountain.
So with the footwear, I noticed there wasn't anything on the kit list kind of stipulating any kind of B1 boots that fits crampon and all this kind of stuff. It kind of says lightweight, waterproof trekking boot or hiking boot. So I'm guessing it's kind of the keyword for me there was lightweight and hiking boot rather than kind of any sort of mountain boot at all. Don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I had some mountain boots, so I had them in my big bag, but only because I had them. You definitely want good ankle support, if only for the way down, because you don't want to be rolling your ankle. Of course, that would bring the trip to an abrupt end, bring your trip to an abrupt end. But yeah, the waterproof is key. Probably enough room to fit 2 pairs of socks if you want on summit night. But the main thing we're trying to avoid is anyone thinking, I'll just wear trainers, you know, because they need to be waterproof. They need to be comfortable. They need to have good grip, because you're not on even surfaces at times. So yeah, I mean, there's probably loads of different blogs out there about the best shoes to wear actually on the mountain itself, and ones that people have got suggestions for. But you certainly don't need really heavy leather boots or anything like that, because yeah, they'll end up weighing you down as you climb.
Yeah.
There's just a few quick details here on kind of training plans. So aerobic training, you know, the oxygen for long periods of time. So lane swimming, long distance jogging, walking, cycling. You know, if you're on a treadmill, especially at the minute you might be, set it in an incline. And then, yeah, the strength training. So you're going to be on your legs for about 7 hours a day. So you need your legs strong enough to take the punishment, really. So you'll see there's not a lot of stuff there that's like biceps or anything like that. It's just a lot of legs. It doesn't hurt to have the whole body warmed up and fit, though, of course.
Cool.
And then just general stretching in the morning. I just want to quickly show that there's stuff you can rent. So if you don't own this stuff, don't feel like you need to go out and buy it if it's never going to be used again. So gaiters, for anyone that doesn't know, are kind of like, I was going to call them wellies. They're not. So they go around the outside of your boots to stop the snow getting in, and also keep your feet dry and warm. So, that's an option. You can rent those. The sleeping bag, if you don't own one, you can rent a sleeping bag locally. Even sunglasses. I don't know why you'd rent sunglasses or thermal underwear, but because they're not too expensive. The trekking poles is a very good point, though. If you don't have trekking
You
poles,
don't have to wash the thermal underwear if you rent it, I suppose.
True, yeah, that's true. Yeah, you maybe the windproof rain pants, things like that. I had a balaclava. I just think it doesn't hurt. I like my neck warm, so I had a kind of like a what they call a buff just to go around my neck. All of that, you can be rented. And then the other things that we suggest as well. So I mentioned kind of putting squash in the water, but it could be electrolytes. Hand sanitizer was on the list even before COVID. And that's just because, we will actually have running water for you when you, warm water when you're washing your hands and such before meals. But the hand sanitizer doesn't hurt. Obviously, any medication you take, you're not going to be able to get it anywhere, so bring it with you. The water bottles we spoke a little bit about. So then I took a Nalgene there, quite good. You can get very, very dry up there. So I had very dry hands, so it doesn't hurt to have some moisturizer. The funny one perhaps is the pee bottle or the shiwi. So if it's cold and if you've taken some Diamox or you've drunk 7 liters of water in a day, there's a good chance you'll have to go to the bathroom. And if you don't want to have to get out of your sleeping bag to get out of your tent as well and disturb your partner or disturb the person you're climbing with, it may be that you want to use a pee bottle or something. So it could just be something as simple, at least for the guys, could be something as simple as any bottle that you just designate to be that bottle. And then of course the shiwi, you can Google that. I won't try and explain it. But that most people had them and used them, and it was a source of great amusement, I think, as well. Sunblock I mentioned, toilet paper. It doesn't hurt to have some wet wipes, biodegradable wet wipes as well, because you obviously can't shower. So if only you're just keeping yourself a little bit clean. And then here's a real quick thing on the weather. So you're going June to October. So it's the busiest season, but of course we don't know how busy it's going to be in these kind of new times. But yeah, encountering rain and snow is rare. So when I went was the November, December. So that's the short rainy season. That's when there was actually quite a lot of rain. But yeah, I wasn't sure if there's any other questions there.
Yeah, we had, as you know, we had a fair few come through, but I think you've probably ticked off a lot of it. Regarding kind of fitness wise, I know it says long walks or running and things, and obviously that will help. So what would you say is any particular comfort level or comfort distance, or it's just all about hours on your feet?
I think it's just hours on your feet. I know we can't really go anywhere at the minute, but hopefully that's going to improve. But if I was training again for when you're going, I'd be heading to the lakes. I'd be heading to North Wales, be heading to the Cotswolds, my nearest area, and just going for long walks during the day. It doesn't have to be a lot of weight on your back. You'll make it a bit harder if you carry kind of what you expect to carry, your camera and such.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just there's kind of the endurance. Because this is not a HIIT workout. You don't have to be really fit for 3 minutes and then break. It's just long
and I think it might have touched on it earlier. The comfort level of a sleeping bag. Was I right in saying it's in -6? Was that right? Or
yeah, we got -6 up there, but I guess you'll know if you're a hot sleeper or a cold sleeper. And you can still have your thermal underwear. You can bring your own kind of pajamas. Whatever you prefer to sleep in, so that you're comfortable.
Because I guess with the sleeping bag, it's a little bit tricky, as obviously the earlier camps or the camps lower down are naturally going to be a little bit warmer than the ones further up. But I think I was quite surprised with it -6. I was expecting it to be lower. So that's good news, really.
Yeah, I think they're just going for the coldest night at Barafu when you're at 4,700, because at a lower level, I guess you could wear less clothes or unzip it a bit. I had a small travel pillow, which I put inside the hood, because it's a kind of like a mummy sleeping bag is the one that that you rent, so that keeps you warm already. Another trick which wouldn't work for everyone is you can bring essentially a pillowcase and put some of your clothes, like your down jacket, in there, and that makes a pillow, so you don't need a pillow. That can be a good option as well.
Yeah, I tend to with my backpack, or I'll have like a liner, a waterproof little bag that I'll either fill with some clothes or put my down jacket in or a jacket in and use that as a pillow. Yeah. So clothing wise, I know we've touched on, it's going to be very different on different levels up, but do you find you needed like a base layer on every day, or is it kind of, I know everybody's going to be quite personal with what they do, but it's all about the layers, and I'm guessing there was a lot of taking things off, putting things on until you kind of get it where you want it.
Yeah, exactly. And then the sun can come out and you have to change all over again. But at least in the days I had a t-shirt, then I had something similar to this, so I could unzip it, and if I was hot or cold, that made it certainly a bit faster than, say, a hoodie. And then you've got your waterproof layer, and then it was really just those three on most days. Always have my gloves accessible just in case, because sometimes when it's raining, it was better to have the gloves on just to keep your hands warm, even if they were wet, because we had a lot of rain on day 2. So yeah,
so base
having a cap as well. Yeah.
So base layers are kind of more nearer the top. You don't really need like a thermal base layer on until later.
No, unless you experience something quite cold, but it shouldn't be below freezing until some at night. So yeah, it's that's kind of when the thermal underwear comes out.
And so waterproof jacket, you said yours wasn't. You found out there it wasn't quite up to scratch. So
I'd almost suggest going out in the garden, putting on your waterproof jacket and having your partner hose you. Just to see how dry it is. So it might sound a bit funny.
Thinking about poncho, because I've got a poncho. I've never actually used it, but I've got one. And I was thinking that would take the main bit of it, but also the breathability of it is, you can't really sweat in a poncho.
No. So maybe, well, I guess personal preference, but like I said,
I'd have a jacket as well, because like I said earlier, I kind of tend to fill my bag if it's there.
Everything you can.
Which comes on to the next one. So backpack wise, or your day pack, what kind of liter size, or should it be waterproof or have a waterproof liner? Or
it should definitely be waterproof, especially if you're carrying something that you don't want to get wet, like a camera and such. So it should definitely be waterproof. I don't recall the liters, but 20 to 30. It doesn't have to be very big. Like the main thing is that you're obviously comfortable with it. You can get those ones that don't sit on your back, so they've kind of got that kind of mesh back on them. And some will obviously take the like a Camelback or similar, so the bladder bottles. So you might want to look at one of those, if only because that way it's just a bit more accessible for your water, rather than having to take your bag off and then get your bottle out, and I think which can be a bit of a faff as well.
Yeah, I mean, I actually used to use Camelback, but I've kind of switched to Nalgene bottles that kind of I clip on the front.
Oh yeah.
Because only reason being really is with the Camelback, I was always paranoid about running out of water or how much I've drunk. Have I drunk enough? And when I take it out of the bag after a hike, it'd be like 3/4 full still. Whereas with a Nalgene, I kind of know exactly what water I've got in the bottle. But like you say, each their own, isn't it, with that?
Yeah, the other good thing about the Nalgene is, of course, you stop. You have to basically stop to drink it, whereas people might have the habit with the Camelback to try and drink as they're walking, and then you're just trying to find that rhythm of, because it's more effort obviously to get it out. So that made me think in your big bag, really doesn't hurt to have a thick garbage bag in there that your clothes are in. So the porters are going to try and keep everything dry. You're going to have your duffel bag, which will probably or should already be waterproof, but should any rain get into that bag, you want to make sure everything's dry. So it doesn't hurt within that bag to have, I think I've got a thick plastic one that you can get, probably £5 or something. You stick everything in that and then close that. It might seem a bit excessive to have that kind of that level of rain protection, but should it get wet, you don't want all your clothes wet on day 2.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Especially if you've saved some special pants for the summer.
Yeah, and then they're wet. You'll be hanging your pants on your backpack as you're walking, hoping they'll dry.
Exactly. So this is one's kind of one of my questions actually, is there any kind of particular kind of snakes or spiders or anything like that you need to be aware of, or is it by just being
Well, nothing I'm aware of in the jungle, and that's really just day 1. After that you might see these they call them Adidas or Adidas mice, because they've got three lines on their back of this small mice that scurry between the rocks. I mean, day 1 you're in a jungle, so you could encounter anything, but you're just walking along the path, you're rarely stopping, you're not going off the path looking for animals or anything.
Okay, yeah.
We saw the monkeys. It's just, if you clear day 1, you're not going to see anything, because I mean, even snakes in of themselves, cold-blooded, they don't like, they like to be out in the sun, or they like to be in warm environments. So as soon as you get that high, that's when you get a lot less bugs, you get a lot less animals, because it's just too cold for them.
Yeah, I think for me it was more of a question, it's like the unknown. So now I know it's not a problem, it's not a problem. So
Yeah, there you go.
just
Just don't go wandering in on day 1. Don't go wandering in the jungle. You might find something.
That's a good tip. So I think that's a really, really good overall kind of view of the trip itself. But for me, I had kind of, what is your lasting memory, would you say? What's your kind of overarching memory of the trip?
I mean, it's the easiest thing is to say getting to the top, obviously. But I think I mentioned a little bit earlier, it's the coming down. Like if I gave anyone a tip, would be leave enough in the tank when you come down, because if you burn all your energy to get to the top, then of course you've made it, but the coming down it can be quite difficult because you're already quite tired. So I wouldn't say that's a happy memory necessarily, but when you're coming down, that can be quite a challenge.
Yeah,
So
brilliant, brilliant tip. But and that probably is the answer to the question I was going to ask you that next, which is like a type 2 fun moment, which is, for those that don't know, type 2 fun is something that's not funny at the time, but then in 3 or 4 months' time, it is funny. So
okay.
would that kind of fit that box as well?
Yeah, that would fit that box. The Barranco Wall also, I think, is just stunning, and there's a great sense of achievement in reaching the top of that, because you get to the top of that, you can see down to the camp, you get these fantastic views that you really haven't had until that point. So that's also stunning. And I guess the other thing, which you can't necessarily pre-plan or anything, is the camaraderie of those you're climbing with, and all the energy that's brought by the team, by the local guides, singing and dancing. And you don't think, oh, I'm going to go climb Kilimanjaro, there's going to be dancing, but we arrived in the Barranco camp in front of the Barranco Wall, they're all dancing, and suddenly people are doing like twerking dances and all this, someone's doing the Macarena. It lightens the mood, and I don't know, that's certainly a very fond memory.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. I mean, that sounds like it would be your kind of favorite bit, which has come out of my last question. So it's kind of the energy with things like that, I think, make a big difference. Like obviously everybody's going to have a tough time going up there, no doubt, but it's how that's shared, I think, with people, or it's kind of realizing it's going to be tough before you get there, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's really only the summit day, which I would say is the toughest. I think anyone can achieve every other day. But even then, like, something they'll tell you on the mountain is, if the mind is willing, the body will adapt. Which is to say, if you got your head in the game, then you'll put one foot in front of the other. You don't push yourself to the point where you hurt yourself. But it's such a mental game, and that's why, for me, I had my little gummy sweets on that first night. So I'd give myself a gummy sweet every 5 minutes. That was my little hit of sugar. And then I was listening to some music, that motivated me across those hours.
Yeah, those little personal tweaks, isn't it, along the way?
Yeah.
One last question was, we had, are there any options for adding days on or days after the tour, maybe the safari or anything like that GAdventures offer?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So if you're going in a few days early or afterwards, the nearest, I guess, primary safari location is Serengeti. Arusha and out with the Ngorongoro crater. I believe it's about 4 to 5 hours away. So it's not immediately in the neighborhood, but yeah, we can add that on and you can go and have your safari experience either before or after the climb.
I'm guessing there's kind of opportunity to kind of kick back and relax with that a little as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There's also Zanzibar. If you were so inclined, you can fly down to Zanzibar. It's a beautiful island just off the coast of Tanzania. You can have your beach relaxation there. So there's definitely a couple of options of how to expand on your trip. That reminds me, actually, when you finish the climb, we work with a local cooperative of women that are masseuses. So I think it's 20 US. It's next to nothing. You can have a great leg or shoulder massage when you're finished, which will certainly be well worth it. And you know that money's going back into the local community.
Yeah, definitely. That sounds like a perfect ending. But thank you very much, Stu. It's been very, very helpful. You've answered loads of questions. And if anybody's got any more, obviously they can throw them through to our email address, which I'll put on the comments. And yeah, thank you very much. And we're all looking forward to it and can't wait. Thanks very much again.
No worries. Thank you so much. All the best with the climb.
Thank you.
Adventure! Adventure!